know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley. It's going to truncate out the silence, but we both left.
Yeah, big gaps.
Pretty big gaps.
I forgot what I say after the welcome to the show part.
We're recording this earlier than normal.
Yeah, that was what I was about to say. Yeah, a little earlier than typical because I have to leave for a show in like a couple hours. So
yeah, you messaged me. How awake are you? I can do this.
I went and got my car inspected this morning, so that I was fully awake there.
I had to go move my car to the other side of the street because it's street sweeping.
Anyway, this is the show where we choose a year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk adjacent album from that year to discuss. Patreon.com/punklautopod is where you get all of our weekly bonus audio. For $1 gets you access to the 200 plus pieces of bonus audio that we've recorded over the years.
We probably should have just done the Patreon first because it seems like we need to loosen up the juices.
Yeah, we had a little discussion beforehand. We were like, should we do the Patreon first or should we do the show first? And I made the executive decision to go with the show first because with the Patreon, we did a News of the World last week.
Yeah, which we have not recorded yet.
Right. The reason why we are doing that one last is because we can just stop doing that.
Yeah,
it's not like a chart where we're like, all right, quick, hurry and get to number one. You know, this week it'd just be like, we went back far enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, we normally do our Patreon first. So yeah, we're all sorts of discombobulated.
Not a significant amount of discourse to talk about. So it'll be purely just like digging through the news websites.
Yeah.
Not having to talk about idiotic things on Twitter. We don't need to devote much time to the Taylor Swift record, other than how many people did you unfollow or mute this week? But yes, patreon.com/punklautopod. You can also go to the $10 tier, a one-time $10 donation. You can choose the episode. You can choose the album we devote an entire episode to. We just did Helmet's Meantime, which was brought to us by Steve Long of Rebel Rock Radio, who has also now relaunched his wrestling podcast, Around the Ring. So, yeah, thanks for Steve for that. Fun record to talk about.
Yeah, and very much love getting those from our patrons. But yes, so this week, I was going through our rotation of decades that we've done, because that's kind of how I determine partly how I determine what year we talk about on the show. And I was like, well, we did the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. I think we did 2 cycles of those as well. And I was like, well, we should probably sprinkle in some 70s and 2010s. And we've really gone over the 70s a lot. So they get passed over a little more frequently just because we've talked about a lot of the big records already from them.
Yeah, there's less and less to talk about from the 70s. There's only so many years. There's we go back to 77 or 76?
We go to 76. 76 has like 4 records on it.
Yeah. So there's 4 years to choose from the 70s. And those years are like, if you look at Rate Your Music, some of them are like a page long. Some are like 4 pages of charts. So not a ton to choose from. And they get pretty obscure. And they also get not good very quickly.
And pretty repetitive, too, because I feel like we've covered a lot of artists from those years already, like an album they've done from that era already. And it's weird to do like another one by that same artist that was like 2 years later. So we tend to leave the 70s for the guests now, if that's something they're comfortable with. So
yeah.
The 2010s, on the other hand, are, how you say, underperforming?
What like Mad TV character is that? It's like is that a Keegan-Michael Key's character?
I don't remember.
Like him doing like an Iranian man or something. Yeah, it was like it was pretty bad. Stereotypical
Oh yeah.
Mad TV, a typical Mad TV character.
Yeah, at the time, Mad TV was like edgier than Saturday Night Live, but really that just means more offensive now in the post.
Yeah. That whole time period, edgy really just meant like actually very offensive. It's like, this is just really problematic.
There's a podcast I listen to where the host, Adam Todd Brown, is You Don't Even Like This Show podcast. He made a comment on one episode not too long ago where he said, I used to think like there were so many amazing comedies from the 2000s, but apparently I just thought being gay was really funny.
Yeah.
Because that's what 90% of those movies' jokes are now.
Yeah.
But so with the 2010s, I hate to be like peek behind the curtain. We only care about numbers type. This might sound like, but they don't really perform very well. And actually they perform pretty poorly. Like sometimes they're one of them our lowest listened to episodes in a month. And there's a couple reasons for that. I think it's because people aren't that nostalgic for that period, because it's hard to be nostalgic for a part of your adulthood. Like that's just not a period that people are super nostalgic for.
Yeah, I would say our listeners skew a little older to where, we were, I was in college.
I'm nostalgic
by
for
2008. So like, I'm really not like, I get to about the year that we're doing. And I'm that's kind of where my nostalgia taps out. Cause it's like, well, now I'm an adult and, everything is hard and I feel incredibly dumb and I just work and be sad.
It's hard to be nostalgic for something that like came out that you listened to at work.
Yeah.
The first time.
It's like, oh yeah, I remember the first time I listened to this. It was when I was scanning car loans for 8 hours.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that. It's when I was listening to that album on the way to work at the warehouse I worked at for 11 years.
I remember this. This was the one glimmer of joy in my life. It's like, something to look forward to. A record that I'm going to listen to like 20 times because we still did that.
Yeah.
I felt like in that time period. So,
yeah. I also think too, the 2010s is when like the great splintering really happened, where the internet just became like super easy to access on your phone, and like you could listen to music on Spotify because Spotify was a thing in 2010 that we were using, and like Bandcamp was also maybe a thing close to around this time period, and you could just get like niche, like real niche. And so like I think the connectedness to the same albums really started to splinter around this time period. So while like maybe like a handful of our core listeners are like, hell yeah, I love that record when it came out, maybe the other chunk were like, what is this? I don't even know what this is,
Yeah, I think the stratification of music audiences really accelerated around 2010, post 2010. It was really with streaming taking over, just everyone getting way more into their particular niches and much smaller communities, and not as much, and I feel like not as much overlap happening in, at least in terms of punk. I think you started seeing less and less mixed bill shows after 2010. So I think even there, the scenes got a little more insular, and you wouldn't as easily be a hardcore kid who comes across like, a punk band that you're like, oh, this is really good, because you're just only into hardcore, and that's like it. And also, we've noticed it in the past looking at the charts. It's probably post 2010, a lot of stuff that gets called punk is like only ostensibly punk through like some kind of it's post-punk adjacent, type of thing. And then a lot of stuff that we would call punk that just gets tagged like alternative rock or power pop or whatever. And those things kind of fall under different family trees. And it's like, well, no, there's something else there.
Yeah.
But the nature of your music, sometimes you gotta really fight for genres.
That is why sometimes when I look at years in the 2010s to like pull albums from, I will also like go look at indie rock and power pop just to see what's also on there that we could maybe be like, hey, that's punkish. We could talk about that.
Yeah. That's a band that played Fest.
Yeah. It's kind of,
It's usually our metric for what is indie rock but is actually punk.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like a lot of like 90s indie rock is just punk music. Just
Yeah.
because punk music was much more rigidly defined in the 90s. That's why I think it got called something different.
I think even alternative rock, like where that term comes from punk. Like it comes from bands that were listening to punk and playing in punk scenes. Like Husker Du is like, you know, one of the founding bands of alternative rock. They were a punk band the entire time, really, you know?
Yeah, and like Minutemen being a massive influence on stuff like REM, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, college rock is also a punk subgenre. It's all punk, really, is what we're trying to say here. Unless it's explicitly not punk. So I was looking at the years we've covered, and I was like, we could do that. I think a good cutoff is 10 years back. Because I think if we do anything like in the 2015, 2016 range, like it's not really going to resonate with a lot of our listeners. So my cutoff is now, like how we do 76 to 79, I'm thinking now we just do like 10 years back. So it'd be 2010 to 2014 would be our 10 year.
Yeah.
And then next year we can add 2015 into the rotation, you know, and so on and so forth.
It's probably, I would definitely say that 5 years is like a hard cutoff of just like, there's just anything within the last 5 years is like too recent. Like really nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah. It still feels new.
Yeah. So 10 years, yeah, I can live with that.
Yeah.
Especially because I remember what 2014 to 2019 was like. It's like, is there very much that I want to talk about?
Right. So I pulled up the year 2012, and the last time we covered this year was April of last year, where we discussed the Sidekicks' Awkward Breeds. And then before that, episode 123, we covered John K. Sampson's Provincial. And in number 47, we covered Ghost Limb's Confluence and State Line's self-titled with Paul DiCiccio, Tor Johnson Records.
Yeah, we've done some good records then.
Yeah. Yeah, that Ghost Limb one. That's funny. That's a while ago, too.
Yeah.
That might have been the first time we talked to Paul. So as usual, you know, I was going through the list, and there was a couple things that I almost selected. This was a tough year. I don't think 2012 overall is as good as we might remember it. I think it's because we were just very insular and very into our specific scene at the time. So the three that I kind of earmarked to discuss first was Spite by Old Flings. It was their only full-length album. From Asheville, North Carolina. They were our friends, actually. We knew them. We still know them. And that record is fucking phenomenal. I was really at the point where I was like, that's a fucking great record. I really would like to talk about it one day.
Yeah, I do think we should talk about it at some point. It's one of those records that feels like we know them, like we knew them before the record came out. So that's like, but I don't know. I think we can certainly be very upfront about it. And it's not like we hang out with them, you know, like we know them, but it's not like we were like good buddies or something. We hung out with them all the time or anything. So there's a degree of separation that I feel like our enthusiasm for the record is very genuine, because there's definitely people that we knew that we were like, yeah, that's cool, man.
Oh, there's another band that we played shows with a lot during this time period that put their album out this same year.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I'm not gonna do that one. No, I don't want to pick that one.
Not that one.
They don't want to even talk about it either. So it's one of those.
Yeah,
guys.
that's fine.
But yeah, that record is such an amazing album. And funnily enough, like as I'm deciding this, friend of the show, Grant McCracken of Bitter Melody Records, and Matt Evans of Old Flings actually guested on another friend of the show's new podcast. They appeared on the Caffeinated Mammal Compilation podcast, which is a new show started by our friend Sean, who was in the band Dear Cavalier, and he started like a recording company, I believe is what Caffeinated Mammal is. And he started this podcast of like getting artists and showing up and recording a couple tracks like acoustically. I don't know if they're all acoustic, but they got Matt in and they did 2 Old Flings songs. They did Funeral Mixtape and Grip. So that all happened this week, and I was like, okay, Old Flings are fairly represented right now this week. So I was like, okay, we'll move on to something else. In that same vein, other friends of the show, Muscle and Bone, released their debut EP with artwork on the cover by Nate Powell, the graphic novel artist who did like March, the John Lewis stuff, like big name. Which that was a fourth wave emo revival band is really kind of what we were calling it at the time. EP, they did that and an LP, and I always thought the EP was just better than the LP, but like only slightly, but just a phenomenal EP. Like it's 6 tracks, 20 minutes, definitely like a substantial amount of time, and great emo revival record. And Transparency, guitarist and lead singer Robbie played at my wedding. So
yeah.
This is that thing where like the Today Show will talk about a movie that's on Peacock, and at the very end they have to be like, and this is a property of NBC Universal. Like they always like have to like tell you like this is something we are promoting. It's a podcast. We're not journalists. Who gives a shit?
It's fine. It's fine. But 2012.
That hasn't happened yet.
Extra digits. That's gonna be a while. 2012. Yeah, you had two friends, and the record we are talking about.
Actually, there was a fourth too.
Was there anything else that you considered? Okay.
Yes, I was strongly considering Pig Factory by the Fake Boys.
Okay. Also,
not really friends, but kind of like Jim wouldn't know me if I, walked up to him or anything, but saw them a lot during that time period, and
definitely met him, and have friends that were pretty close to them. So
right, which that record was amazing too. Just such a good record. So yeah, those were the three I was considering. The ones that I was deeply invested in personally, and like going to their shows, and the album we are talking about today, I also went to the shows. So
yeah, but looking at 2012, there's a lot that I remember for sure. There was tons of stuff that I was paying attention to at the time. But what is shocking to me looking at these charts is so much metalcore.
Still
so much metalcore. I'm like, was this that big, or is this a 2000s metalcore revival revision popularity bump of people being like, oh yeah, I love Pierce the Veil, let me go listen to all of their records now? I don't know. I definitely remember some of this stuff coming out and just thinking it was over. I was like, who still cares about this? What I was thinking then. So, but apparently a lot of this has stood the test of time, and people have continued to rate it on this website. So
yeah, I mean, I guess some big important records that are worth mentioning. We have All We Love We Leave Behind by Converge, which was an amazing record that followed up Axe to Fall, which I don't think people loved nearly as much. So it was kind of like a return to form. Cloud Nothings, who are still very relevant in 2024, they just put out like a brand new record that's like super high regarded and critically acclaimed, and on Pure Noise Records too. Like that band, I don't know how that band has stood out as long as they did and got as big as they did, but they did. Emo revival band.
Yeah, I don't really know why this is on here. Well, I see the surf punk secondary, but the King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard record that came out that year, I would be tempted to say that that's a revision, but I do think I actually heard the name King Gizzard in 2012.
Maybe, yeah. That maybe would have been around the first time when I heard it. I will never listen to this band thanks to the guy who badgered me every single day on the way to work, walking into work. Because you checked out King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I'm never going to listen to this band now. One, their name is ridiculous, and I'm not going to listen to it. Not that I even really care about ridiculous names. It's just like
it's too stupid.
Some names are just too stupid where I'm like, I don't listen to that.
Yeah. Like you picked such a goofy name that isn't even funny, and like I don't think that you take your music seriously.
And they crank so much.
Oh yeah. I mean they put out they have 26 albums. It's like come on guys. You're just a jam band. You're just doing Buckethead.
Which I think they are a jam band, and they just people pretend they're not. Is that what it is? It feels like people are like, no, it's not. It's not jam band. It's like it is a jam band though. Go see them in the Sphere, and then tweet some Drew Carey tweets after.
Title fight Floral Green. I remember that record coming out. That was a pretty big deal.
You know, this might be one of the most important records from this year that I've still never heard.
No, yeah, I've never listened to it. Probably never will.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we should just in the to give it a chance, but everyone who ever cited that record as an influence after that I listened to, I'm like, why? It sounds boring.
Yeah. That record is why we call Deftones rock shoegaze. Like
the most indie rock band of all time, or at least of the last 30 or 20 years, Japandroid Celebration Rock came out. Still a good record, but
is it?
I mean, I haven't
the
listened to it
second
forever.
one.
Is it the second one? Oh, maybe it's not as good then.
Yeah, because they all look the same. That's why you can't tell. It's literally
Yeah.
the same layout. But I don't think that it's good. And I don't know that I've listened to that one in a while. I have revisited the first one, and that's not great. It's very bland. It just runs together. Japandroid's a band still getting referenced all the time on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, I do not get it. What is the obsession? Who is it for? Who is still actually listening to the 3 Japandroids records?
Right. Like, I get why people were like, I put them in the same category as like Tenement and like the Men and like Mets, just like those real small groups, mostly 2 pieces, but some are more like really fuzzy indie rock. At least the Mets and the Men are still making music, you know?
Yeah. Japandroids was a hyped band.
Yeah. Like
They
out
were-
the gate.
They were a Brooklyn vegan band.
Yeah. Yeah. Pitchfork band. Yeah. We'd be remiss to not mention that this is the year of Uno, Dos, and Tres by Green Day. Friend of the show, Adam Yo, the Green Day defender. He he's like, you can make one great album out of those 3. He's like, he's a defender of those records, but he's like, but also they'd be better suited to just, they could have just made one record with the best songs out of all of them.
Yeah.
Is the gimmick that each member wrote the whole record? Because that would be funny, but I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. I don't think it's a Kiss solo record situation.
God, I wish. I wish it was. It'd be so much more interesting. What does a Trey Cool album sound like?
Is it the Peter Criss of the 3? I don't know how much time you want to spend on the charts, because I know there's a substantial amount of stuff we could talk about the record.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
If we can throw it out there. Is that's the first Joyce Manor record, right? Yeah. No, it's the second one. Yeah, that's right.
yeah. Constant Headache was before.
Yeah, but they were like a year apart.
Or the self-titled. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one it's got the Germs font on it, the Germs circle on it for some reason, and it's like a 10-minute album, isn't it? And like ridiculously short.
Yeah.
Which I kind of appreciate that they were like, here's our big, because it's technically the breakout, right? Or is Cody considered the breakout? I don't know. No, Never Hungover Again's the breakout. That's got twice as many listens as this record, but
Yeah, the first record has the most ratings out of any of their records, but that could be retroactive. I don't know. I remember when their first record came out. We were just we were so into that world of Tumblr punk.
Yeah.
That was an inescapable band.
Yeah. Anything else like really important?
That Hop Along record was a big deal when it came out.
Yeah.
And the next one was too. Really, the first 3 Hop Along records are all big deal records.
But they didn't, I feel like time kind of forgot them. They were kind of left behind.
Well, they were, I mean, the first one was 2006 and this one's from 2012. So they were slow. And then even from between 2012, the next one was 2015. And then they did one in 2018. And that's been it. I don't know that they do anything. Do they play live ever anymore? I don't know.
Lead singer did a solo record a couple years ago too.
Yeah.
Francis Quinlan. So they may be done as a unit, but
Yeah.
the Menzingers on the Impossible Past. Oof.
Which one?
Dad's American Rat Ass. This is important. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, putting This Is Important in your album actually will guarantee you that it's like putting collector's item on a comic book. It means it actually is going to be worthless in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Things that are sold to be collectible rarely ever are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that band, I don't know that they got this generally. But from me, it was Go Away Heat pretty much immediately.
Yeah, I didn't like that record at all.
It's just like, this is the worst version of that.
Yeah, emo revival, yeah.
And I think that's what it continued to be.
Yeah,
It
and
was
then
like this band came out, and then I was just like, I'm out. Slap my knees.
Well, I'm out. And then they were like huge assholes. Like that was another thing about them. They were like they became like they thought they were rock stars.
Yeah, I don't think anyone liked them.
A funny band that also thought they were huge rock stars, but then actually kind of did turn into huge rock stars. Code Orange Kids released their first full length album that year, and I remember hearing a story about them like opening up playing some show that like a friend booked, and they were like they have show clothes that they changed into.
Yeah.
And then they just had this huge, like, aloof rock star energy to them. But hey, they're a Grammy-nominated band, so I think they actually count as rock stars, kind of. Or for whatever that's worth in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, they make, wrestling music now. So
yeah.
They're making money.
Yeah. And what? Handwritten by the Gaslight Anthem? Important record for you?
For me, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I don't think it's, like, as important as...
I mean, it's the last great Gaslight record.
Including the new one?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely better than the new one.
So is the...
I haven't gone back to I actually have got a copy of the new one for Christmas. And I haven't revisited it. I need to. My biggest issue with the new record was the mix. Like, it really was just like, what is this mix? It's really hard to listen through. But like the latter half of the record was more tolerable. It was definitely a situation of like ears getting comfortable with used to the mix. So I think revisiting it, I'll see.
Who mixes their records? Because that's 2 in a row now.
Well, the last one, it wasn't entirely the mix. There was definitely like songwriting and production choices that I wouldn't have done that. Peter Cadis did this record. I don't really know what he's known for doing. A recording engineer and mixing on Turn on the Bright Lights by Interpol.
Weird.
He's done some National. Okay, that tracks.
Yeah, with the type of music, yeah.
Interpol, The National, Sharon Van Etten. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I can see why they worked with him. I don't think that the Gaslight Anthem are as much of a national Interpol band as they think they are.
You know who would make a great... Man, I don't think this will never happen. But I want to hear a Gaslight Anthem record produced by Jeff Lynne.
That would be cool.
I think it would sound awesome.
Real tight and clean.
Yeah.
Real fat.
Yeah.
That good low end. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be really good. That reminds me of the Husker Du discourse, actually, because people were talking. I remember people talking about like, people always say the Husker Du thing, like, if Husker Du records were recorded better. It's like the production that you were thinking of, the Sugar production, did not exist in the 80s.
True.
Like, no one could record like that. The closest you could get, I was thinking, like, imagine a Jeff Lynne produced Husker Du record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a Nick Lowe. Nick Lowe's like the other one where I'm like, pretty dry, pretty tight, pretty clean, where I think that could work. It's like, but nobody else did that. There was no one else producing records like that. A Jeff Lynne Husker Du record. That'd be wild, though.
Yeah. Didn't Jeff Lynne say he's like retiring soon or something like that? I feel like that's like a story that came out recently that he was like, yeah, I'm done soon. Because the ELO still play? I think they do.
They did pretty recently. I don't know when the last time there was an ELO tour. The Over and Out tour right now. So that's probably their farewell.
Oh, okay. Maybe try and see him real quick.
Should I go with that?
Yeah.
I was looking at those Neil Young set lists. I'm like, damn, I should probably go to that. It is with Crazy Horse.
Well, we should really get into the record. So
yeah, we should.
We've jibber jabbered a lot. So all right. So I got the year 2012 and I selected Forgetters by Forgetters.
Strike while the iron is hot. Baby, like it or not, everyone climbs up the backs of their peers. But we're not like that here. We've a culture and creed, you say. I was raised on the run and he fell anyway. So strike when the iron looks hot. Baby, we're all we've got, so let's go out to the coast. We can outsource the ghost and get free. I've got an Orange County feeling. I could fly this car into a building and come out looking 10 years younger. And baby, you look hot.
The Forgetters were... Oops, I called them the Forgetters. That's not their name.
There's no the.
Forgetters were from Brooklyn, New York. They formed in 2009. This was released November 13th, 2012 on Too Small to Fail Records. The person on this album is Blake Schwarzenbach on guitar and vocals, Kevin Mahan on drums, or Mahan? I think it's Mahan. And the album was produced by Jay Robbins, who, according to multiple reviews I read around the time period, also played bass on the record.
Yeah.
It does not credit it online anywhere. I have a physical copy. I guess I should have pulled that out and tried to see if it says anywhere in there. But every review from the time said Jay Robbins played bass on the record. Doesn't say who played the synths on the album, but
Probably Jay Robbins also.
yeah, good chance. So yeah, this is the Forgetters, lowercase f.
Yeah.
No, the was how they were introduced to the world. And then
Yeah.
I guess everyone just forgot about that because it's only written in capital F anywhere now.
They should have taken the vowels out as well.
Oh, that would have been great. FRGTTRS. Forgetters. Forgetters.
First of all, do we like the name Forgetters?
It's fine.
I don't
It's
think
like,
I don't think it's a good band name.
I mean, I don't think it's the worst band name. It's
No.
every other band name that Blake was in was better, but
Yeah.
maybe that's what you're having there. I mean, I don't know. Go see this band called Forgetters. That's okay. You're not gonna feel embarrassed to say that unless you're like, I'm going to hospital, like a British person, dropping the.
Yeah.
I guess before we get into like our personal experience with the band, we should do like the story of the band first,
Sure.
because that segues more into that. So, Forgetters, fronted by Blake Schwarzenbach. Blake, famous for Jawbreaker, and then after Jawbreaker, later Jester Brazil. But when Jester Brazil called it a day, Blake was a like adjunct professor at NYU or something like that. Or no, it was a different college. It was like Greenland State or something. It had a name like that. Hunter College. Anyway,
I don't know.
he was like an adjunct college English professor and bartending. That's probably how he made his money at the time. And he had a band called Thorns of Life. Now, Thorns of Life were a little bit of a hype project. It was definitely like, oh, Blake from Jawbreaker's got a new band. Oh, that's so cool. And it's with Errant Common-Bus, from Pinhead Gunpowder and Crimpshrine, and just, being a zine and artist in his own right. And so, like, they toured. They did, like, a West Coast tour. Like, Thorns of Life were like, ooh, we got this. This is something big. There's, like, lots of bootleg recordings of this band performing live. But they never went in the studio. They never recorded anything. And they called it quits in 2009. There were rumors that there was an album called Legislators and Prophets that was produced by Jay Robbins. But the sessions didn't go well, is what the rumor was. Then Blake was like, there never was an album. We never recorded it. Like, we didn't even try. Doesn't this, they say sometimes the truth.
He sounds like Disney. Just like pretending things never happen. There was no band called Crowns of Thorns or whatever it's called.
Thorns of Life.
Thorns of Life.
He would be so mad at you for getting that wrong right now. You illiterate fool. Because it was like a Percy Bysshe Shelley,
Of course
poem. It's like a Thurgood poem or something,
It is. We should look it up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We're not doing a Thorns of Life podcast, but
It's
never
funny
will.
that there's a Thorns of Life Wikipedia page for the band.
Yes. Percy Bysshe Shelley.
Is it?
Who's Ode to the West Wind has the line, I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. You just hear Blake saying that.
Yeah.
So in the same announcement that this band was done, Blake announced that there's a new band, which weird, right? It means him and Aaron Kamabos had a falling out, right? Like, I feel like that's why that band stops immediately and this band starts as soon as
Yeah.
because it was just like, we're done. I mean, unless the announcement was like well after the breakup and they never officially broke up publicly. And then they were like, oh, by the way, this one's done, but here's our new one. So who knows? But Thorns of Life lasted less than a year. Like, they were a very, very short-lived band. So he announces Forgetters and that this band was featuring Kevin Mahan of Against Me fame. He is the original Against Me drummer. I don't know if that means he's the pickle jar drummer or what, but he's the first drummer of Against Me, as well as bassist Caroline Paquita, who was in the band Bitchin', who released a lot of records on No Idea Records. So we got the Florida connection going on there. And then they promptly went on tour. Forgetters went on tour. And this is kind of where we enter.
He did the same thing
Yeah.
with both of these bands. I cannot name Royal Crown Review. Thorns of I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. Like, we should have recorded the Patreon first. Wow. Brains are not functioning. Thorns of Life, Forgetters, both did the same thing. Let's go on tour before releasing anything.
I love that our Blake voice is the Forgetters specific voice, because he doesn't actually talk like this anymore. But not to this. He's not as theatrical.
Yeah, I guess. It's not as much of a recitation. It's still got he still has a very pinkies up kind of way of talking. Okay, let's do this really quick. Why the fuck does he talk like that?
He's an English lit major.
Is that all? He sounds like a rich kid.
Is he? Do we know that?
I don't know. I've never confirmed that. I'm just my wife doesn't like Jawbreaker, doesn't really like any of Blake's bands that I've played. And she's like, the main reason is she doesn't like his voice. She says he sounds like an old British lady. Which, like, Forgetters, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But why does he talk like that? It's not just, I've been reading poetry for
I don't know. If you only
20
read
years.
classic poetry, I could see how because even when like he does his banter on stage, he'll use big words where you're just like, okay, Blake.
Yeah.
He did the last time I saw him. It's just like, he still does it. I think he's just like this. I think it's a level of pretension is really what it is.
Yeah. I'm like, did he go to boarding school? Like, what's his deal? Like, just like, how do you exist? How are you the person that you are? Anyway, aside.
So Forgetters like immediately go on tour, and we learn of this. Hey, they're coming to Charlotte, and our group of friends are like, well, we have to be there, right? Like, because we're all Jawbreaker fans, huge Jawbreaker fans, Chester Brazil fans. We worshipped at the altar of Blake Schwarzenbach at that point in our lives, because he had a mystique about him. Jawbreaker breaking up when they did, and then like their resistance to ever reforming, and just to Brazil. It was just like, oh wow, he's one of the elder statesmen of punk music. One of the figures of 90s punk that really stood above the rest of the scene. Like, there was a level of like respect and just fandom that people had for Blake.
Yeah, and I think the Jawbreaker like tour stories are, a pretty significant part of that, and like the blowing out his voice and then just like resting for like a day, and then he's back to just destroying his voice every night. Like that's pretty hard. Like, you're really committed to this.
The signing to the major label and like drastically changing his singing style.
Yeah. I mean, having to, like, it was just like,
you couldn't keep going that way. And then people calling for sellouts, and people hated the record, and it's like the audience rejected Jawbreaker, and that caused, then they call it quits. And the I think it's like the wave of people who came after who were like, Dear You's great. What are you people talking about? Just because it's different doesn't mean it's not a good record. And
I think Dear You got reevaluated really quickly.
yeah.
I think them breaking up, it was just like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
We lost him. That record actually was good. Damn it. It certainly has its flaws. I don't love Dear You the way some people do. There are things that I don't like about that record. But
At the end of this episode, we're going to do a power ranking of Blake albums, and
that'd be interesting.
I think we have very different takes. So
We're going to put them all on.
just the LPs, not the EPs.
I think we can put the Forgetters EP on there.
I guess, yeah, it's a pretty substantial EP. But so yeah, it was just like Blake's coming to town. Well, Gabbo's coming, so we have to go. Because there was a big question mark. We were like, what's it gonna be? We're like, is it gonna be Thorns of Life? I think Thorns of Life was like, they had a lot of acoustic stuff too. Like it wasn't like a full electric all the time band. Like it was a full band, but also not always.
From what I remember of the Thorns of Life bootleg stuff that I heard, it sounded like it was kind of somewhere in between Jawbreaker and Jets to Brazil. So I think that was kind of the expectation with Forgetters. It's like, it's probably going to be along the same lines. Going to be somewhere between the two bands. I don't think he's going to go fully in either direction. But yeah, there was definitely just like this is probably the closest we're going to get to seeing Jawbreaker.
Yeah, I think that was part of the excitement. We're like, wow, we're gonna see 1/3 of Jawbreaker. One of the most important parts. I mean, I guess you're not going to be like, wow, we saw Adam Pfaffler drumming a band. That would have been cool too, but it wouldn't have been like the same as that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We were just like, wow, there he is. Like I remember there's like a little booths in they put the Milestone in Charlotte. And we were like sitting at these tables and we're like, there he is, just standing there. He's really tall too. That really helps him like stand out in a crowd. Like, hey, there's Blake. And I remember just being like, we were so excited to see something we'd never heard a second of the music. It was wild to be like, I'm so excited for a mystery is really what we were.
Yeah, there weren't none of the bootlegs had surfaced yet.
Not yet.
We didn't start getting the bootlegs until after we saw them. So yeah, that first show was just a total like, what's going to happen? Is he going to do magic tricks?
Yeah. Is he like the drummer from the Pixies coming to do magic tricks in front of us now?
It's like, is this even going to actually be music? He's just going to walk up to the mic and like open a book.
I'm going to read excerpts from my favorite Shelley poems now.
He's just reading fucking On the Road chapters.
And I remember it was really good. I remember the set was really good. I was like, I don't know these songs, but they sound really cool. Vampire Lessons was a song we were like, that song's called Vampire Lessons, isn't it? And it was one of those ones that like stood out the most.
Yeah.
And we were like, that's awesome. That's so good. And then the next year, they took a while, but they put out the self-titled double 7-inch, which featured Vampire Lessons and a couple of. I remember listening to that 7-inch going like, I remember some of these because. Weirdly, there was a bootleg of the show we saw in Charlotte that had made its way around.
There was that one, and I know there was at least one other bootleg.
Mm-hmm, there were two, yeah, for sure.
And there may have been one. There may have been others, but I don't know if I downloaded them. But I remember having the two bootlegs. It was like, this is, who knows? Well, there was like the element of like, who knows if this is going to actually happen because Thorns of Life didn't.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I was like, we got to document this because like, Thorns of Life didn't happen. There were some documents of that made it. But like, let's get these Forgetters sets recorded too, just to have them so they exist in case they never do anything with them. And they did play 4 Thorns of Life songs in the Forgetters rotation. 2 of those songs wound up on this record, which we'll talk about later. The other 2 were never recorded. Though one of the songs that from the Thorns of Life, thought I wrote down, but I didn't. One of those songs they still play now with Jawbreaker.
Yeah.
Black Heart or something like that. Yeah. Black Heart. Yeah, they still play that now, which is wild that they're doing like Jawbreakers playing Thorns of Life songs. I wonder how the other 2 are like feeling about that. But
I don't know. That's the Jawbreaker reunion has been hard to gauge. Like how much do they enjoy doing it? Because sometimes they seem like they're having fun and sometimes they really don't.
Yeah. So the 7-inch comes out. It's great. It's really great 7-inch. I really like that 7-inch a lot. I re-listened to it before we recorded, and I was just like, this is really good.
I didn't revisit the 7-inch before recording this episode, but I kind of don't have to because I remember what all those songs sounded like.
Yeah,
I can look at that track listing and know what each one of those songs sounds like.
And it did kind of sound like a mix of Jawbreaker and Jester Brazil. Like it was a little punky and it was a little indie, I guess, for lack of a better term.
It felt like a softer Jawbreaker for the most part. Like it felt like there wasn't as much intensity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 7-inch, double 7-inch was great. I loved that. Like I was really happy with that. I was like, oh, sweet. He's back. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they got even quieter. They just they got to the point where people assumed the band had broken up. And I found an old Tumblr post that I had made it was like, too bad this band's not around anymore, like before the LP had come out. So apparently that had made the rounds that Forgetters were done.
Yeah.
Turns out that wasn't true. They did lose their bass player. Caroline left after the 7-inch. But in 2012, they went into the studio with Jay Robbins, who that same year, I loved looking up what else producers do. That same year, Jay Robbins also produced Lemuria's Veru Malor 7-inch. You know, that's the 7-inch with the screen printed side. He did Hostage Calm's Please Remain Calm. That's the Hostage Calm record with the jacket on it.
Yeah.
Regent's Antietam After Party. Broadcaster's Tightrope Walker 7-inch. And The Swords Apocryphon. And then like a handful of other things of bands you've never heard of. Jay Robbins, very busy man. Always working, will work with anyone, it seems like. He'll be like with a big name and then with a no name, like in the same like month. Busy guy.
Yeah. When you said, I don't think I ever knew that Jay Robbins recorded this Forgetters record.
I didn't either. Because honestly, it doesn't sound like one.
No. I was going to say like, oh, Forgetters got the Set It, Forget It production. That's surprising. I would have expected that they would have. Yeah, they must have just wanted to be real cheap. But like, let's just do this.
Yeah, I could also see Blake kind of pushing for a little rawer production than what Jay tends to put out. Because Jay, I think is Jay Robbins an underrated producer?
I think that he gets really good sounds. I don't think that he does a lot of capital letters production.
Yeah.
I think he's capable of it, but it just probably depends on how much he wants to be involved. It's probably very selective from him as far as like, this is what I think you should do. Like, you know.
Yeah, I can see him being like Ian MacKaye. I mean, he comes from the same scene, but Ian MacKaye isn't necessarily known for being like a producer. But he will be in studio with bands and he's like, here, play this. Play this drum, this real drum, real weird. Like play it this way. I can see Jay Robbins being that kind of producer, being like, we could do this, you know, and make suggestions.
I think he can give. I think his typical approach is probably to give kind of technical recommendations to people, but only really give more thorough production if he's like inspired to do it. I don't get the impression that he's like setting out to make everybody an absolute the biggest band you can be, you know, like I think he's pretty laid back in terms of just like, what do you want to do? Let's do that.
And I could see him not pushing against Blake too. Yeah. Because, you know, they know each other, right? Weren't there like tours, like Jawbreaker tours, and like they come from the same time period. They're kind of the same. Did he do anything for Jets?
No, he did. He did Orange Rhyming Dictionary.
I thought there was something else that he had done. So he knows Blake, and he knows how to work with Blake.
Actually, he did Four Cornered Night. Did he do all of the Jets to Brazil records?
That's wild. That actually makes a lot of sense. That makes so much more sense why he produced this album now, too.
Yeah, he did.
So, yeah, he's worked with Blake 3 times now, previous to this, plus like the split 7s they did together and whatever tours they did together. So Jay probably knows Blake pretty well, and he also probably knows that Blake's a particular person, I guess is the polite way to putting it. And Jay seems very amenable, like very like whatever you want to do kind of person. I don't know. Yeah, I don't actually have a clear understanding what J. Robin's personality is like because I've never heard him really talk. Like I've heard him talk in like short interviews, but I've never like listened to like long form conversations or interviews he's ever done. I'm sure he's done them. I've just never heard him. Like I don't know what J. Robin's personality is like. Is he a funny guy? Is he a serious guy?
Yeah.
Like, you know, in my mind right now, he's just kind of like this automaton that I don't know like what direction his personality goes. I have a very clear just idea of what Blake's personality is, though.
The impression of J. Robbins I have is that he's probably pretty dry and probably not very talkative.
Yeah. The interviews I've seen, I saw an interview with like J. Robbins and Kim Coletta, and Kim was like making jokes. She was the one cracking jokes.
Yeah.
So, and he seemed a little bit more straightforward. So they all kind of, really though, if you just look at the whole of Jawbox, you're all kind of like dry, right? Like that's kind of their all.
Yeah.
Like Bill's got that vibe too.
I didn't quite understand what you said, he answered.
I want to send a telegram to the USA. Good morning, Hassan. I am going away tomorrow.
If you could see for once 1 inch beyond the nose that cuts the air before your face, you would not sing, my dear, with such high zest about the wonders of this modern world. Is there some place we could go and use each other for a while? I've got so much to disclose. I've got $5. Wait, no, I don't. If you could see the strings as armies swing through the night, the pious pigs that rub the shoulders of the remote controllers, you would scream and shrink upon the ledge before the brink to see the hatred that drives this gilded age. I'm not immune to this. In fact, I'm sick with the truth. It comes like knives flashing on the Senate floor. If all we have to give is our consent and a will to live, we'll get the country we deserve. We'll get the weekends to ourselves.
But yeah, so they go record this record and they just dump it out on the internet. Like it's like, here you go, it's for sale. Like there was no lead up to it. There was very little press about it. I don't know if there was any press. I think the press was, there's a new Forgetters record and it's out now and you can order from this website.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was out in November and then they went on tour immediately. And what do we want to talk about the record first or do we want to talk about the tour?
Well, let's talk about first impressions of the record.
Yeah, okay. When it first came out, what did you think of this album?
I didn't love it.
Whoa. Right away? You were already like, meh.
I think there was an initial, oh shit, Forgetters is back. I love the 7-inch. Great, new Blake. Like, this is awesome. And it really didn't distinguish itself to me beyond that initially. I remember, I just remember not being thrilled by very much of it. Like, I think the stuff that stood out to me, it was like, oh, some of the songs from the bootleg are on here. Like, yeah, that's cool. They did, they did Hoop and Swan. They did I'm Not Immune. It's like, those were really good songs from the bootleg. I know these. And then I kind of just waited for, like, I felt like every listen to it, it was like, well, what else is great from this? And nothing really jumped out. Nothing really distinguished itself as being great songs from this record. It just felt overall like very uniform listening experience. So it was kind of just like one of the two songs that I already knew came on. I was like, oh, cool, I know these. And then that's it. Yeah, I didn't love it at first. I was excited for it, but I didn't feel like it had a payoff.
I remember, I don't know, I think I was like on board right away. Maybe because I was so into Perfecting Loneliness. Like that was a record I listen to Perfecting Loneliness more than I listen to any Jawbreaker record. And so I think this fits closer to the last, Just a Brazil album than any of the Jawbreaker records. And I think I was just all in right away. I was like, Blake, yes, excited. Cool, I'm in. And then I think it had to grow a little bit. Like, I definitely liked it initially, but I think over time I wound up liking it more. Because there's the mood, the Blake mood that you get on Perfecting Loneliness and you get on this, like the melancholy, and you get on some like Dear You songs. Those always like really, those were the songs that got me the most out of his discography. And so this kind of fits that mood and that tone the most. So I think that's why I was really into it. I even put it on my top 5 that year, which I found that list of my top 5. Let's see. Number 5 was Converge. Funny that was a top 5 record for me that year. That record was really good. The Jimmy Cliff record that came out that year's The Fake Boys and Old Flings. And so I had this 4th between Converge and Jimmy Cliff. So like I was all in on this band, and I dug the record immediately. And yeah, so I guess we can go into the tour, because less than 2 weeks after the record came out, they go on tour. So we have like this album comes out, Thanksgiving happens, and then the first week of December they go on tour. And they hit North Carolina 3 times in that tour. They played Chapel Hill, Local 506 first, and then they hit Charlotte. And the Charlotte show, it was not actually Charlotte, it was Belmont, which is right outside of Charlotte, was at the Haunted Mill, which was a haunted house / putt-putt course that didn't do shows. It was just someone was like, had an inn there, and we're like, it's a good space. We can have a band play here. And friend of the show, Josh Robbins of Late Bloomer played that show. They were one of the openers. And other friend of the show, John Russell of the band Gnawing, was there. And I remember we all were talking and hanging out, having a good time. We were just like, can you believe it? We're seeing Blake. That never wore off. Can you believe it? We're seeing Blake Schwarzenbach right now. That was more important than actually like that it was Forgetters at the time, which I guess should have told something about the band. And I remember this show, the fire alarm went off halfway through Forgetter's set, and so everyone had to go outside halfway through the set and wait for like the fire marshal to come clear it. And then we all went back inside and they finished their set. It was weird. But I think when they came back, they played a little harder, because I think they were just they wanted to get back into it, I guess, trying to recapture that feeling. Because if I remember correctly, like people weren't super into the first half of the set, because I don't know. I think just people weren't that familiar with the album. And even at the time, as much as I liked the record, I don't think I was that familiar with the album. So that show happens. And then 5 days later, they played somewhere and in between. And then they came back to North Carolina and played at the Emerald Lounge in Asheville, North Carolina. And that show, our friends Muscle and Bone opened for them. And this is the show where our buddy Robbie told the same story like 5 times in a row.
Yeah.
You remember?
we got to the show before it started. We were talking to Rob, and he was a very funny guy because he can make nothing really funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he can make nothing into a story.
Yeah.
And he did that and proceeded to tell every single person that walked up within like a 30-minute span the same exact story, like it was a script he'd written.
Word for word, exactly the same.
But he's basically said like he went back into the green room to get a beer.
Mm-hmm.
He got a beer.
Cooler
He got a
beers.
beer out of the cooler. And Blake was in there. And
Reading. Blake was in there reading.
And he dropped the beer as he was getting it out of the cooler. And he turned to Blake and said, "Sorry." And Blake said, "It's okay." And then he comes out and tells us this, "You'll never believe what happened." Like, he was like, "This is insane. Blake told me it's okay." Like, it's like, it's not that big a deal. You didn't even have to say anything to him for dropping the beer in the first place. And then he told us, and then the one person came up. He told them the exact same story, word for word. They like wander off. Somebody else comes up. It happened. We watched him tell this story 5 different times, and we were the only ones who were there every single time. And I think part of the bit became he's telling the same story because we're standing there. Like, I think that was part of the joke. He's like,
I'm gonna make them hear the story like 5 times in a row. Because every time he would tell it, we would laugh more at like how ridiculous this was getting. This is also the same show where the house DJ played Jawbreaker
Yeah.
over the PA. It's like, what
Tell him
the?
to turn that off.
Yeah, it was like literally they're like, tell him to turn it off, make him stop it now. I think like Matt was there, Matt Evans from Old Flings was there. I think he went and told the DJ, hey, you need to cut this out. You need to cut this out. Like, change it before he hears.
You don't know.
You don't know.
Because Robbie saw Jets to Brazil, I want to say, and he told us like when he saw Jets to Brazil, people would yell like Jawbreaker songs at them to play, and he like flung his guitar in the air and stormed off and like didn't come back. Like that was the end of the show.
Yeah. So there was a touchiness around Jawbreaker. It was like everyone knew not to bring up Jawbreaker around Blake. It was like nobody bring up his ex-girlfriend. We don't talk about her around him. And I remember those sets were great, but also like I didn't know the record as well yet, so it was weird seeing him twice in 1 week.
Yeah.
Songs he didn't know very well. And then nothing.
Yep.
They broke up like right after the tour. They were done. It's weird. I don't know what the motivation between like what the breakup was about. I don't know if it was like, well, we should at least tour the record so we could sell some, because they put it out themselves. Too Small to Fail was their own label, and the only thing they put out were the Two Forgetters releases. So maybe the tour was just, well, we got to sell some of these, because as soon as they were done, and as soon as the tour was over, it's like they broke up.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was like a formal breakup, but they were done. Like they didn't do anything else after. Was there even a West Coast tour, or was that just for the first early run? I don't even know if there was a tour after that album tour.
Yeah, I was trying to see if there was any kind of announcement of breaking up, but I'm not really finding anything. Yeah, I would love to find an interview, but I feel like Blake, he might want to talk about Forgetters less than he wanted to ever talk about Jawbreaker after Jawbreaker broke up. Like, I feel like he has forgotten that Forgetters even existed. Like, there was so little reaction to Forgetters beyond the holy shit, it's Blake nerds.
Yeah.
Like us. Like them putting the record out I mean, you know, having no press. Like, oh, here's the record and here's where we're playing. And we're playing a putt-putt place and like a bar in Asheville that never does punk shows. Like that kind of tour. And they played Local 506, the same tour, like 3 times in North Carolina. It's like, why are you all in on North Carolina?
And yet they didn't come to Charlotte during the Jawbreaker tour until last year when like he's like, the last time we were here was in the 90s. Like, Blake, you were here as Forgetters like less than or maybe a decade ago. So
I've never been in this state.
That was Belmont, North Carolina. That was not Charlotte. It's like he knows the jurisdictions of like city lines. There's
just nothing about the only Forgetter stuff is the press from its release, like the reviews and a little bit of press of it coming out and like, here's the tour. And then after that, there's nothing. And he doesn't talk about it. He doesn't say why they stopped. I think at some point he moved to California. Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder how much this is tied into Blake's personal turmoil that's happened around during this period. So he was doing the college thing, and I think everybody was like, yeah, Blake's gonna be a college professor. And I guess an adjunct professor didn't translate into an actual like teaching job going forward. Because the next thing we heard is, I'm a bartender in Brooklyn. And like, that was that. And then all of a sudden, like you do the Forgetters thing, and they did one more tour in February, but it was also an East Coast tour. I saw that 2013 February. And there's like not even a story of them breaking up. They were just done. And then the next story you get is he's in LA playing solo shows. Like Blake in 2015 is doing solo stuff. And it's like a mix, a little bit of everything. And then that's followed with Blake went to jail and no one knows why. And he's never told anyone what happened or why he was in jail. In like 2016.
Yeah. It's never come out. And like even like nobody can find any actual like prison information either. Like as far as, you know, when people get arrested, like the blotter type stuff where they tell, you know, arrested for blah, blah, blah. You know,
I think
No one
knows. I think it's a situation where you have to like pay.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's like I'm looking at the Dag House message board from 2016. People saying, why was Blake Schwarzenbach arrested? And it's just Alexander Schwarzenbach, age 48, arrested in San Diego County, 9/9/15, right before he canceled the tour.
He never said. He went on a podcast. He did the Overnight Drive podcast, which was like Andrew from Self Defense Family's podcast with Hans, the original guitarist of Self Defense Family, or End of Year. And they did an interview, and like he talked all about the people he met in prison. Like that was 90% of it was just him talking about, there was this interesting fellow in here that liked to play chess. And it's just like he talked about the people. It was like he was doing a Kerouac thing, or like this is going to be part of my future novel, and never said what he was arrested for. I don't know if at the time there was like, maybe there was still like a trial that hadn't happened yet or something, but yeah, it never came out what happened, why he was arrested or what happened.
I assume drugs.
Yeah.
I mean,
but if it was drugs, you think he would just tell people that? I don't know. Weird.
Maybe he liked the mystique. I don't know.
Yeah, he would.
He was especially weird during this time. I remember there being like a video interview with him, probably, oh man, what was that? And his hair was huge.
Yeah, he looked.
Do you remember that?
Yes, he looked like fucking what's his name? Phil Spector.
Yeah.
It was that big of hair. It's huge. And I remember this is also when he was like manic on Facebook and like posting, like he would post a lot. And it would be like, he'd do that thing where it's like a word at a time posts every, like a second apart. Like, and people are like, as someone who suffers from a similar condition, it looks like Blake's having a manic breakdown on Facebook right now.
Yeah.
Like that, I remember that being the thing. And it was just very strange period. I assume he has some sort of neurodivergence, mental health,
Yeah.
problems.
I think he certainly has dealt with depression.
Yeah.
I think you can surmise that from his lyrics alone, but and yeah, definitely has like temperamental, as far as like just the way that he was so touchy about Jawbreaker stuff for a long time. I think it's just like he's definitely got a short fuse. So
yeah,
I think you can only speculate because I don't think he's ever publicly talked about his mental health. But yeah, that was the Forgetters to that stretch of time was just this really erratic, like, what's he doing? Like, what's going on? And like people have talked about it, like a lot of it, like, is he doing like a performance art thing? Like, is he trying to be like a Joaquin Phoenix?
Oh yeah, I'm not there thing. Yeah.
Like, what's going on? And like, and then kind of silence
until
after that. Like, I feel like we didn't really hear about Blake after 2016.
Well, yeah, and then the Jawbreaker reunion happened, and he said in an interview in like 2020, he was like he couldn't get a job. Like he said, I couldn't even get a job as a dog walker. Like I just could not. I was struggling very badly. I didn't have a job. I didn't, And he said that Adam, like every year, he described it really interesting because the story was always like, yeah, Jawbreaker broke up, but the way he tells the story is he's like, Adam never quit Jawbreaker. Adam was Jawbreaker from when they broke up and till they actually got back together, because he said Adam would come to them every year. He's like, this is what's being offered. Here's how much they're wanting to pay us. And like a lot of money.
Adam did all the business.
They turned it all
the
down.
Time. Really?
Yeah, he did the label stuff. He reissued the records. He sold the merch. I think he was just like, when they initially broke up, he was like, we'll get back together. And then just never let go of that. Chris was like, I'm going to move to Portland or Washington, get involved with like that Olympia. That's what it is. The Olympia scene. Do shorebirds and like a bunch of stuff up there. But Adam was always just the one. He was kind of kept that candle aflame, and he was the one you went to about Jawbreaker stuff. And he said finally, Blake, he's like, I had no prospects and no money, and it basically was, they're offering us this much money to play Riot Fest, and he was like, okay, it's time to do it because I have no other options. So Jawbreaker is a cash in. Is really what Jawbreaker reunion is. Which sometimes when you see them, and sometimes they look like they're having a good time, and sometimes look like they're having a bad time, that might factor into it,
Yeah.
At this point, is it just a job?
You keep me an honest pro. If ever I should dare to swell, one look from you can level me out. Return me to my hell. It shows the will most incorrect to think that I could rise. Forgive me, I forgot myself. I forget myself sometimes, but you remind me. There is no future, not for the loco. You remind me to work from the outside and keep it simple.
But in that time since Forgetters ended, like, people just didn't talk about them again. I bought a vinyl copy like years later, like a used copy, probably from someone who bought it new and then was like, meh, I never listened to this, and then sold it. And so then I bought it. And I don't know. I've always really liked this record, and I've always thought it was pretty underrated. I thought it was cool, really cool record. It sounded different. And I was always a little like, why is everybody kind of like not like this? Because I think the tide turned. I think people were initially like, it's not what I thought it'd be, to I don't like it over time. Revisiting it, what did you think of it?
So, like I had said, my initial reaction to it was like not being thrilled with it. There was a stretch of time where I continued to listen to it. It was just, I guess, it just in my rotation in the way that I don't listen to music anymore. But, and I don't know how long that really lasted, but at a certain point, it just dropped off. And I think it was just finally like, I don't think it was that long. I don't think it was that long after seeing them that it just kind of wore off, where I was just like, I am not getting what I want out of listening to this record. But I do remember some songs from this record maybe being in rotation. And I definitely remember I remember hearing Forgetters songs in like 2017. So there was stuff that stayed somewhat in rotation from the record, but the record overall, it wasn't like I'm not going and listening to this record from beginning to end. I don't think I ever got a copy of it, and it eventually became like, I don't think that I outright disliked it. I don't think I could say that then. It was just like, I'm not that into it. But I think in my head it was a good record that I just didn't love for a long time. When you picked this record, I was like, all right, that's one to revisit, certainly. It's been a very long time, and it has kind of a weird reputation. And there's definitely like moments from this record and lines from this record that we have repeated as like jokes for a really long time.
There's 3 specific lines on this, or just words, even not even full lines, but like the opening track, Strike, the way it's like one of those, like, I don't know how you would describe this kind of song. It's like a slow burn intro track that's not really like a full song, but the first line is like, strike while the iron is hot. Like, it just has this like beat poet sort of feel to it.
Yeah, I don't have to put my teeth in a jar.
Yeah, I like that line.
Come.
Oh deadly death.
Oh deadly death.
And then Ribbonhead.
Yeah.
Which that's the worst song on the record.
Yeah.
Ribbonhead is terrible and way too long. Ugh, Ribbonhead sucks. Maybe that's what turned a lot of people. I was like, that Ribbonhead song is brutal.
6.5 minutes long. It's not good. It's the end of the record, so it ends on a bad note.
Yeah.
That was for a really long time, that was my, like, I like this record. I hate the song Ribbonhead. I think it ends the record really poorly, and it just kind of like revisiting it. I don't think that I like it. I don't like it.
The album?
Yeah. I don't
Wow.
like the record. Like, I like songs from it. I like parts of songs, but I was really trying to be pretty open-minded to it because I was thinking like this could be not a lost classic, but there could be more to this. Like, this could be a better record than I remember it. And the difference now is like I couldn't say then that it was a bad record. I wouldn't have said that it was a bad record. I think it's a bad record. I think it is a struggle to get through.
It's long. It's 51 minutes. It's long.
It's 51 minutes and you really feel it really quickly into the record. Like the first half of the record has the best stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It has I'm Not Immune. Turn Away has kind of that turn away from, like, that's pretty good. Hoop and Swan is definitely one of the better songs on the record.
I think Hoop and Swan's the best song on the record.
I don't know if Die by Your Own Hand is. I think that's a song that has good parts, but it's too long.
So there's two versions of the record. There's the CD version and the LP version. And the LP version actually cuts two songs. And they cut Die by Your Own Hand and Les Eravistes.
Yeah.
Eravistes. They cut those.
Eravistes.
But to be fair, I'd wish they'd just cut Ribbonhead and left Die by Your Own Hand. Because I think that's better than... I think Les Eravistes is fine. It's probably the weaker of the two they cut. I think Die by Your Own Hand's the better song of the two. The piano track with like rain sounds in it too. And
listening to the record this time, I'm kind of like Die by Your Own Hand. Oh Deadly Death. I don't think is good.
I like that one. It's one of the faster songs on the record, and it's got a little bit more crunch to it.
I don't know. I just struggled with it.
That's a Thorns of Life song too.
That
one made the jump. That one and
Ribbonhead.
Yeah, Ribbonhead's the other one that made the jump. Blake loves Ribbonhead. He wouldn't cut it for the LP. He kept it from Thorns of Life. Yeah, those two are tracks that made the jump. I think O'Diddly That's way better than Ribbonhead, but
and Les Eravistes, I don't know. It's French.
It's French. We don't know how to say French words.
Les Eravistes. That song, like, I'm just like, it's past Hoop and Swan, and I'm just like, I don't really care for this. And then Les Eravistes is like, it's okay as a song for the most part, but I'm like, I'm not really having fun listening to it, and I'm just overall not having that much fun listening to the record up to this point. Because even the good stuff from the first half of the record that I do like, I'm like, it is so consistent mood-wise of just like a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like,
okay.
There's songs that are like, this is a bummer, but it's a really good song. And it gets to Les Eravistes, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, Blake? What is this about? Who is Valerie Solanas? I'm not that smart. We aren't that smart.
Dorothy Parker. Yeah, well, she's a poet. I know Dorothy Parker is.
I know who
She's
Josephine Baker is.
Josephine Baker. Yeah.
Like, what are you saying? Like,
those
why are
three
you
names?
talking about these people? This, like, who are that? Well, next year, Eravistes. Like, it's that I'm going to make references to things that I thought everyone knew. Kind of Blake sensibility.
You don't know Valerie Solanas?
That it's just like, we're dumb. I don't know how you don't know that Jawbreaker fans are dumb, but we are.
We like the songs so that you're sad about your girlfriend.
There's only so smart you can make your lyrics. And
you made us want to smoke unfiltered Chesterfield Kings.
Yeah. Like, I understand there's keys in their eyes, but they lock from the inside. Like, I understand hot rods and gunshots. I get Rabbit. You know, you've just gone too far into literature for the average punk who's listening to your records. And I think it's like, it comes across as almost like a disdain for punk. And it feels like this very erudite, you know, New Yorker artiste sensibility that's like, yeah, this is the most pretentious thing he's ever done.
Yeah, it's kind of like Blake Unchained. Like, he's fully just like, because Jester Brazil, like, that was a band. Like, that felt like a band. Like, it was they have 4-piece. It's a full lineup. Those musicians were musicians who had been in other bands and going on to do other things too.
Yeah. Jets to Brazil has a little more of Blake the Poet sensibility.
Yeah.
But it also has fucking Jeremy Chaitlin.
Yeah, right.
From Helmet and Handsome.
Fucking
like,
New York drummer up in here, or guitar player.
He was bass in you know, like there.
Yeah, and maybe that's why Thorns of Life kind of fell apart, because Aaron Commodus is the Crimp Shine Pinhead Gunpowder guy. Like, he's like dumb punk guy, pop punk. I mean, smart, socially, politically, like cool person, artistic, but he's not like a poet. Aaron Combos isn't teaching English lit at Hunter University or whatever. He's still making zines, and cartoons in his 50s now. He's probably, I don't know. So maybe that was the split there, and maybe that's why that first 7-inch is punky. Like, it's fairly punky still.
Yeah,
that one's actually political too. This one doesn't feel that political, or maybe it's just too aloof that we don't understand how he's being political. Maybe the one that uses like the clips of like talking about like the Muslim prisoners, that kind of stuff, maybe is the most political he gets on this record. But it definitely is English lit punk.
In America, that's
yeah, that's probably the most political. Seconds is political too, because it's got the Margaret Thatcher clips.
Yeah.
And that Scottish guy? He's like, I don't agree in any of your political statements. Which that Seconds is a cover. That's a cover of a Human League song.
Oh.
Which I listened to the original because I was like, what's the original sound like? It's a synth song. Like, there's not much to that song, which kind of explains why that song just feels like a droning sort of thing. But that's kind of how the original sounds. So it's an interesting cover to do. But yeah, very strange. I don't know. I re-listened to it and I was like, I still like it. It still works for me. It's still good. I think it's a good album bookended by 2 not good songs. I think Strike sets it up. Strike is more successful than Ribbonhead, but it's still goofy enough to be like, what are you doing, Blake? Come on. I think the album is Strike leads into Lie Artist well enough though that it doesn't feel as harmful. Ribbonhead kills the end, and then the fact that there's a cover right before that also. Honestly, you could end the record in America. Because In America feels like an ender too. It has that long drawn out thing that's like, you could end it on In America and been enough album. Probably would have been under 40 minutes if you'd done that. I mean, Seconds isn't bad, but just not really necessary.
Yeah.
I did listen to this, and I listened to the 7-inch, and I listened and thinking, I wish the LP was more like the 7-inch. I think the 7-inch is much better. It's tighter. The songs are more fun, upbeat, enjoyable. There's a lot of just drawn out stuff on this album, but I don't know. The Forgetters 7-inch is Jawbreaker, and the Forgetters LP is Jets to Brazil to me. Like, that's kind of how I feel.
I don't know though. I love Jets to Brazil. Like, I love Perfecting Loneliness, and I just don't get that feeling here. There's so few. I guess there's just so few moments on this record where I feel like Blake is having relatable human emotions. I feel like throughout so much of this record, it's like he's lecturing. And I never got that feeling from Jets to Brazil. There's like, we put a monkey in the White House. It's kind of goofy, but it's like I feel the anger. I feel the anger at the Bush administration of that time period. Which that's like very beginning of the Bush administration.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, so much of this record, lyrically and musically, it just feels so drawn into this like intellectual exercise. It feels weirdly reserved, and I don't know. Maybe he's just listening to a lot of Pill, and he's just listening to a lot of like 80s British post-punk at the time.
So that actually reminds me. I was looking up reviews for the record, and I stumbled across a friend of the show, Dave Brown's blog, Oklahoma Lefty. And he had written a review of this record back in 2012. And maybe it was 2013 he wrote the review. But because I was just like looking, and there's not a lot of reviews of this record. Every review in this record, it comes from like personal blogs and websites and Punk News, which is like anybody can write a review for Punk News. And so I was like, wow, there's like not any major publications that reviewed this. And so I read Dave's review. And Dave came upon this record in a different point of view that I think is actually what a lot of people were missing. So I'm just going to read straight from the review. And he says, Forgetter's self-titled full-length debut is a dark and moody take on punk rock that seems to draw heavily from goth artists such as Joy Division and Bauhaus. And then he goes into like who's in the record, and then says, the sound on Forgetters is dark and somber with a haunting desperation and an ominous atmosphere. In fact, it is the mood that drives this record more than anything else. Of all the bands over the last 30 years that have tried to claim the mantle of Joy Division and the Smiths, Forgetters is the only one that could actually do it. This band has an understated nature, which is helped by their limited presence online and the complete lack of flash and flair, and that is not a bad thing. It will probably take me a while to fully digest this album because it's so different than what else is out there right now, and that is a breath of fresh air in and of itself. So Dave picked up on the darkness of the record, and while Human League is not really a goth band or like a dark synth band, he's pulling that from... That is one of the darker Human League songs I've ever heard. It's a pretty like downer song in and of itself.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that stuff is darker than you think it is. Like, or a lot of it is just kind of like, just has a very bloodless kind of cold energy. And I think that's most of what he's channeling on this record. Like, he's just, it feels detached. And maybe it's a bit of an expectation thing. Because I feel like with Jawbreaker stuff, he could always be in Just Brazil. Like, I feel like he could always be he could be pretty sophisticated in how he explains things. But I feel like he's not. I always felt like he was really capable of explaining very relatable emotions in an interesting way. And here, I don't feel like he's trying to communicate very much emotion at all. Or if anything, he's very deliberately trying to communicate like a very muted emotion, a very controlled emotion, which maybe he needed to do that. I can certainly understand that as an artist, to not pour so much of your worst feelings into your music. Like, I definitely relate to that and would even encourage most people to try to write that way. But maybe he just hadn't figured out how to do it well.
I think it's telling we've not had new music from Blake since this. This is the last new thing that they've ever put out. They've talked about new music with Jawbreaker, but it's like never come out. Like, if there is new music, they've never recorded it or played it live, as far as we know. So they've talked about doing new music at some point, but I don't know. Maybe they haven't found it yet or not. He also,
he hasn't convinced them to record all of the leftover Thorns of Life material.
Yeah. I was like, we like that one song, but we're not doing all the rest. I mean, maybe he definitely had some troubles there during that period. So he just wasn't capable of writing anything during that time frame. But yeah, maybe he's stuck. Maybe he's got a block and he can't get past it either. I don't know.
Forgetters didn't do well.
No. Not really.
But how much... See, that's another thing I would like to hear him talk about. How much of that was self-sabotage? There was no one who would put out this record. They put it out themselves.
Yeah.
Did he shop it?
Probably not.
Like, it's possible that he went to people that he knew and they listened to it and were like, I don't feel it. Or I can't fit it in my schedule. I can't do it right now.
I think people were possibly nervous. Thorns of Life fizzled very quickly, so maybe people were like,
what's your tour plans? And
I don't know, like, am I gonna put this out and you break up immediately? And that's what happened. They put it out, they do like a February tour, a December and a February tour, and then they silently break up. So I don't know. Maybe people were just like, we'd sell it. Like, I know plenty of people who would have put it out too, but you're right, maybe he went to people he knew, or maybe he was just like, I can get all the money for it myself.
Maybe.
Which maybe isn't the worst idea. It probably sold decent. It's new. The 7 probably sold really well. I feel like that did sell well. And I bet the LP sold initially pretty good because it's new Blake. Like, I do think there was probably a good number of records sold right away. I don't know what the press runs were like, but I don't think they repressed it.
Yeah. Blake, well, he never really handled the Jawbreaker business stuff, and I kind of wonder if Jeremy handled a lot more of the Just to Brazil business stuff.
Well, I mean, they were on Jade Tree too, so Jade Tree would have done all the actual manufacturing and selling of it. just gave them copies to sell on tour. So yeah, doing it himself is one thing too. I don't know what the. I would like to hear his thoughts on Forgetters now.
Yeah.
You know, does he think of it positively or negatively? You know,
I would suspect he probably isn't fond of it.
yeah, or maybe disappointed in it and how it turned out. But
Yeah.
we teased a power ranking.
Okay.
All right, where does this record fit for you in the Blake Schwarzenbach recorded pantheon?
This is my least favorite thing he's ever done.
Like flat out least favorite
Yeah.
thing.
It is the absolute bottom. I'd probably say then it's Bivouac.
Oh wow. Okay.
I can't. Maybe Bivouac and Four Cornered Night are tied, but I say that, and Bivouac is the only Jawbreaker record I actually own a copy of.
There's great
and it
stuff
does
on
have
it.
Chesterfield King.
It just also has Donatello and Parabola, which to me is he wrote the Donatello and Parabola albums with the Forgetters record. Almost like the weird, dark, slow stuff, or like some of like the back half stuff on Dear You that's just like dark, kind of how the tone of this album is. Okay, here's my.
I'll go Four Cornered Night, and then I'll probably say Bivouac, and then I could probably say the Forgetters EP. Probably then Orange Rhyming Dictionary, then Unfun, then Dear You, then Perfecting Loneliness, and then 24-Hour Revenge Therapy. I think that's my ranking.
My ranking is very different. Dead last, Four Corner Night.
Oh wow, yeah.
It just feels like the weakest. It's the weakest Chester Brazil record.
No one, yeah.
It's
no
nobody's
one's favorite Chester Brazil record.
Here's the other hot take: Orange Rhyming Dictionary. I don't like that album very much. It's blasphemous, I guess, but that wah kills me. I hate that wah on that record. It sounds terrible. I hate it. Then I go Unfun. Unfun's so raw to me. They don't even feel like the same band for the most part. And then I probably put this, then Bivouac, then the 7-inch, Forgetter 7-inch, and I only have 3 left, right? So then Dear You, Perfecting Loneliness, and 24-Hour. I think that's yeah. Our top is pretty much the same, but
yeah,
I definitely have higher opinion of this than a lot of other stuff. I don't know. I really dug it. I just got into it at the time, and it like sunk its claws in me, and I still like it.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. Like I said, I didn't love it then, and I couldn't explain why. And I think now I know why. Maybe 10 years from now, I will like this one, but I don't know.
Yeah. After they've released like a new Jawbreaker record that nobody likes,
we'll get it.
Dear You Part 2.
Yeah. We'll get a bad reunion Jawbreaker record. No, we don't want new Jawbreaker.
I think that is the safe bet. Just don't do new ones. Just don't do it, because it's probably not going to be very good.
It's just like it's a legacy you've never been able to live up to under different band names.
Yeah.
Like, why come back to that band and then not be as good?
I am surprised Blake's never done anything solo. Forgetters essentially is, but just a Blake Schwarzenbach record, you know?
Yeah. I don't know what that would be.
Yeah. Well, he did that 7-inch where he covered Otis Redding for that comic book, that Matthew Rosenberg comic book.
Oh yeah.
That's the newest thing we ever heard from Blake Schwarzenbach after Forgetters is a cover on a 7-inch for a comic book that came out in 2020, 21, something like that. That I own and never listened to. So, rating? You gonna give it a rating?
Yeah. It's like a 2.5 for me.
I give it a 4.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. We don't get this very often. We're like very opposite ends of the spectrum on records, but we did one not too long ago where I was just like, I don't like it. Don't like it. How it's Napalm Death. That was the one. You loved it. I didn't. Well, I think that does it. We talked 2 hours.
Yeah.
About Forgetters. So this is also the only Forgetters to do a whole episode on, so it makes sense. We get the whole Forgetters story and picture and post Jawbreaker life. But thank you everyone for listening. You can follow us on all forms of social media at PunkLottoPod. Voicemail line 2026. I forgot our phone number. 202-688 Punk. 202-688 Punk. If it's wrong, I'll edit it out. and punkloudabot@gmail.com. So thank you all so much, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.